everybody, welcome back to my YouTube channel. My name is Becca and I'm so glad that you're here today. Today I'm going to be talking about 3 things that you should consider before you buy a plant. Before we get into it, make sure that you give me a follow on Instagram. I would love to have you join my plant family that I have over there. It's a beautiful plant community and we talk about plants and love on each other and it's so much fun. Now, I know that when you start your plant journey, and especially me, when I started my plant journey, all I wanted to do was buy more plants. So I was consuming. And I wasn't really being responsible about it. I wasn't thinking about what the plants needed, did I have time for the plants, and all these other things. As a result of that, I was killing a lot of things. And I started to think, do I have a black thumb? And the answer is no, I do not. But I just wasn't caring for the plants properly, and I really should have been thinking about these 3 things before I even bought them. So the first thing that you should really consider before you buy a plant is, do you have the correct conditions for the plant? So by conditions, I mean, do you have the right lighting for the plant? Do you have the humidity requirements for the plant? And if not, are you willing to make up for it? I listened to a podcast a few weeks ago about light. It was Bloom and Grow Radio podcast, and I was shocked. I actually put off listening to it for a long time because I knew that once I listened to it, I had to make some changes, and which is so silly, but I realized that a lot of my plants were not getting the appropriate amount of light to help them grow. If you have seen my previous videos or you follow me on Instagram, you know that I have this huge north-facing window, and that window is essentially useless to my plants. And when I first moved in here, I thought, oh my gosh, I have this huge window, plants. And the reality is not plants, because plants don't thrive in northern-facing windows. And actually, I should say, some plants do thrive in northern-facing windows, and those are far and few between. There's not a lot of plants that can do that, and especially not the plants that I really wanted to have. Now, I do have a few of those low light plants in this window, and another part of my house, I have an east-facing window, so I knew that that is really the only window that's going to provide some good light for my plants. And I say all of this because before I buy a plant, now I really think about, do I have the light for this plant? Is it a plant that needs a lot of light? If yes, then it's probably not for me. For right now, I can't have it. Now, there are some plants that I really wanted despite my lighting conditions. And the only reason that I could justify those purchases was because I purchased a grow light, which is hanging here. I knew that I could not provide the light that these plants needed, so I have brought in a supplement. And if you're not willing to do that, then you're going to be killing a lot of your plants that need a certain amount of light that you just can't give them. Before you buy that plant in the store that's so beautiful, maybe pull out your phone real quick, or even read the label and find out what kind of light it needs. If it needs bright indirect light, that's probably an east or west facing window. Even more so, a south facing window pulled back a little bit from the window so it doesn't burn. Those highlight plants would be great for a south facing window, and if it does say low light tolerant, those are really great for a north facing window. Do your research, read up about it really quick. There's a lot of resources online that you could find within a touch of a button, a click of your finger, and you will know whether or not you can provide the correct conditions for it. And if not, grow lights. Point number 2 is, do you have enough space in your home for this plant? Now for me, like I said, my options for windows are very limited. And the windows that I do have, the plants should probably be sitting in the window. And so that severely limits what I can have. In my east-facing window in the kitchen, I have a lot of smaller plants, probably 4 to 6 inch or smaller pots that sit in that windowsill at all times, and they're doing really great there. But I can only fit so many plants in that spot. I have several plants that I have had in this situation that have grown out of it. For example, my monstera. So I recently potted it up to probably an 8 to 10 inch pot, I don't remember, but it just doesn't fit on that shelf anymore, so I have to find somewhere else. The thing is with plants, they grow, and you want them to grow, but once they get bigger, they need bigger pots, and then they're not going to fit in certain places that you've always had them. So if you are strapped for space, really be considering, is this plant going to grow? How big, how fast, and do I have room for it once it gets bigger? I've seen a lot of people have these huge monsteras that they just can't even have anymore because they're way too big, and then at that point you either propagate them down, like cut off pieces, or maybe you donate it somewhere or sell it, whatever the case may be. But Before you buy a plant, really think about if you have the space for it in the place that it needs to be. I am not going to be buying any more plants that would do well in that east-facing window because I know that it's absolutely full. There is no more real estate available on that windowsill. And last, before you buy that plant, I want you to really think about whether or not you have the time for it. Some plants need a lot of care. The first one that comes to mind is a maidenhair fern. They need to be evenly moist in the soil at all times. And maybe there's exceptions somewhere along the line that I don't know about, but that plant needs a lot of care. I, for one, know that I am not able to give a plant that kind of care, so I just don't have a maidenhair fern. As much as I would love one, I can't do it. I like plants that are low maintenance, need to be watered once a week to once every 2 weeks, sometimes even less than that, honestly. But I cannot handle a plant that needs to be watered every day. It's just too much for me. I'm way too busy, and honestly, I have other things going on in my life other than taking care of my plants. So if you already have a lot of plants, maybe you should stop and consider how much time it's taking you to take care of those, and if you can, add another plant to the mix. Now, usually the answer is you can add it to the mix, and that's great. For me, I can usually add it to the mix because something will die eventually and then it'll all feel regulated again. But I have my plants on a schedule, so I'm not doing sporadic waterings. I water a couple of plants at a time with each other. If you're packing on a lot of those plants that need a ton of care, you might want to consider, can you care for another needy plant? And for me, like I said, the answer is no. Just as a bonus, I wasn't going to add this, but I think I'm going to. I want you to really think about whether this is an impulse buy. A lot of my early plant purchases were completely by impulse. I saw something and I got it, and I did not even think about what it would need, how much time I have, none of these things. As a result, a lot of these plants died because I wasn't even thinking about the purchase before I made it. One of these impulse buys that I made was a polka dot plant. And I wasn't too keen on the polka dot plant, but I saw that everyone on Instagram had one, so I wanted one too. It was like peer pressure, but worse because nobody was telling me to buy it. I just wanted it because everybody else had it. I really think about my plant purchases. Like if I see the plant at the nursery, I won't buy it immediately, usually. I'll go home, think about it for a day, and then go back, and if it's still there, then it was faded and it's mine now. Alright, so that's all I've got for you today. I really hope this video was informative and helpful in your future plant buying trips, and if you liked this video, I do hope that you give it a like and subscribe to my channel, just in general if you like what I'm doing here. I'll see you in my next one. Bye!